Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps Next Level. So team, I just wanted to update you that I was able to successfully clear the AWS Solution Architect Certification exam, or that is the exam SAA-C03. And so based on my exam experience, I wanted to basically review some examination questions by each of the services, right? Also giving you tips, what would be the keywords that we need to identify in each of the exam question so that you will be able to narrow down your answer to the appropriate AWS service, right? So as part of that initiative, today I wanted to go through some exam questions or some practice questions on the WAF and the Shield service. So what are all the keywords that you will identify within the question so that you can narrow down the answer to WAF or a shield? So that is what we will start today. So let's go ahead. So this would be the agenda for this video. One is we will quickly go through what are all the WAF and shield service, what are their use cases, and what are all the keywords that we need to remember in the certification exam questions. And we will also review few practice exam questions as well. So what is WAF? WAF is a web application firewall. Okay? And it is typically used to block the unauthorized requests hitting your application that is running on the layer 7. So WAF helps to protect your web application from common web exploits and bots, right? So if at all there is a bot which is continuously hitting your application server, there is a chance that the performance of the server might get degraded, right? So we need to have a check on these unauthorized requests as well as the excessive request that is coming from the bots. So WAF is generally provisioned in front of an application load balancer or in front of a CloudFront distribution, or it could be in the front of a API gateway or a app sync service. So WAF helps to control access to your web applications by using the IP address from where the request originated, right? So through the WAF, we can basically control whether to accept a request or to reject a request based on the source IP, as well as based on the country or the region from where the request is coming from. Right? So this is a summary of the use cases in regard to the WAF service. Now, what is Shield? Shield is basically a managed DDoS protection service, right? So DDoS, we know it is distributed denial of service attacks. It is basically the attacks that is coming from the internet, which would contribute to performance degradations for your infrastructure as well as for your applications. So if at all you want to mitigate the DDoS attacks, yes, we can actually go ahead and register for the Shield service. So Shield provides continuous attack detection and also automatic mitigations. And Shield offers two tiers of protection. So if at all we are subscribing for the Shield service, it offers two types of protection. One is a standard protection, which is free of cost. Then we have advanced protection, which is going to incur some charges. We are going to pay some dollars for the advanced protection. Why? Because as part of the advanced protection, Shield basically will, as part of the Shield service, there will be a dedicated set of engineers who will be allotted for your organization in order to closely monitor the DDoS attacks as well as take the appropriate actions. Right? So that is the reason generally Shield advanced option will incur some charges. Okay. Now importantly, in the certification exam questions, what are all the keywords with which you can actually narrow down your answers to either WAF or a shield? Right? These are the keywords that you need to remember. Okay. So whenever you see in the question something to do with the mitigating or preventing the DDoS attacks, right? So definitely the answer should point to the shield. Okay, because shield is a service, it's a managed service that is used to prevent or mitigate the DDoS attacks. Okay. Then if you see the word like cross-site scripting attacks, that will be WAF. Okay, because WAF will be coming in the picture if at all we see in the question they're mentioning about a web application or a website. Whenever you see a web application or a website and with this cross-site scripting attacks, etc., definitely the answer should point to the WAF, right? Similarly, SQL injection attempts, that is another keyword again. For this, the service would be WAF in order to prevent this SQL injection attempts. Large number of illegitimate external requests, again, WAF. Right? So when you see these keywords, automatically you should point to WAF as the answer or the choice which is having WAF. And even prevent injection of unauthorized SQL queries, that also again WAF. Prohibits the company from servicing a specific country. So this also we have an option in WAF, right? If at all you want to allow a traffic or block a traffic originating from a specific country, you can actually do that via the WAF rules, right? And also a web filtering solution that allows or blocks web requests based on the country. Okay, here also you can see the country's parameter is coming in. So this also we can control it using the WAF. Okay, so these are some of the keywords, team. So if you really see DDoS attacks and the organization wants to protect the complete AWS infrastructure from the DDoS attacks, then in that case you can go for a shield. But if at all they say that there is a website or there is a web application that is running and it is uh, experiencing some cross-site scripting attacks or SQL injection attempts or illegitimate external requests, unauthorized SQL queries, then you can definitely point your answer to the WAF, right? Also, when they also talk about restricting a request from a specific country, allowing or blocking a request from a specific country, that also definitely can be handled by the WAF. Okay. So now we will review some exam questions, team, and so that you will be able to connect the keywords as well as identify the right answer. Okay, so this is the question number one. A company hosted an e-commerce website on an auto-scaling group of EC2 instances behind an application load balancer. The solution architect noticed that the website is receiving a large number of illegitimate external requests from multiple systems, IP addresses that constantly change, right? So how the performance issues can be resolved? Now we identified the keywords. What is a keyword? Large number of illegitimate requests. So definitely it should be the WAF service. We have to address this with a WAF service. Okay. And another keyword to remember. So this is your first keyword. The second keyword is IP address that constantly change. Right. So since they have mentioned that IP address is constantly changing, you need the default rule is not going to work. You'll have to maybe use an advanced rule so that you can actually closely monitor the IP address is actually making the DDoS attacks. Okay, so here with the first keyword, we know that it is the service WAF that we need to use. And with the second keyword, we know that there is some special rule that we need to set with the WAF. It's not the normal rule, it is basically the special rule. Right? So if you club this two, what would be the answer? So we can actually neglect all the answers and we will narrow down to only the questions which is having WAF in the option. So it could be option 2 or option 4. Either option 2 should be correct or option 4 should be correct. So what is option 2 saying? Create a rate-based rule in WAF and associate the web ACL to an application load balancer. Okay. And what is rule 4 saying? Create a regular rule in WAF and associate the web application to the load balancer. So as we saw here, the IP addresses are constantly changing, right? So in order to really understand from which IP we are getting an unauthorized request, we have to really go for a rate-based rule. Okay, so that is the reason for this question. This is the correct answer. Okay, so you have to go for a rate-based rule in WAF and associate the web ACL to the application load balancer. Okay, So in that case, since this is a regular rule, it is saying regular rule, which is not going to work in this case. So 2 is the correct answer. Okay. So now what is this rate-based rules? Let me just show you that in the console. So if I go to this rule group, when I'm creating a rule group in WAF, let me try to name this group as my demo rule group. Okay, and I'm adding a rule here. So here you can see there are two types of rule. There is a regular rule and there is a rate-based rule. So what is this rate-based rule saying? Limit request rates for requests that matches your criteria. Applies the action to the matching request when the limit is reached and remove the action when the rate falls below the limit. Okay. So now if at all I'm selecting this rate-based rule, here we are getting an option. What is the maximum number of requests to allow during that specific time window, which will satisfy your criteria, right? Right? Let's say now you have an evaluation window of 5 minutes. So in that 5 minutes, how many requests that you can either allow or block from the source IP address that you can define it here. Let's say if I'm giving the limit as 100, and there are 100 requests coming from the same source IP, right? So till 100 requests, the request will be allowed, but at the 101st request, the request is going to be blocked. Okay, or it can be vice versa also. You can block the first 100 requests, and maybe the remaining request you can unblock it. So that is the reason for that scenario. What we got, the IP addresses change. It has to be handled using this rate-based rule, so that you can actually specify the number of requests, okay, that you need to block or allow. Right? So I hope this is clear. Now let us go back to the next question. So you can see here, team, just to summarize again, a rate-based rule tracks the rate of requests for each originating IP address and triggers the rule action on IPs with the rates that go over a limit, right? And the default is you can have a 5-minute time span. Okay, now let's move into the next question. Okay, so a company runs a website on EC2 instances behind an application load balancer that is configured as the origin for the CloudFront distribution. The company also wants to protect against the cross-site scripting and SQL injection attacks. See the another keyword here. Straight away boiling down our answer to WAF, right? You can see here, cross-site scripting, SQL injection attacks. Straight away it will be the WAF. Okay, so let us pick the answer, which is having WAF. So Shield Advanced, his Shield is not needed here because they are talking about a website, right? Website or a web application. Whenever a website or a web application is given and it is registered behind a load balancer, it's very clear that it has to be WAF, right? So all the Shield things we can neglect it. So the basically the answer that is left is this. This is the correct answer. Set up a WAF distribution, or we'll have to set up a WAF on the cloud distribution, CloudFront distribution, basically, and use conditions and rules that blocks the cross-site scripting and SQL injection attacks, right? So if you go to the CloudFront distribution, I'll just show you here. So this is my CloudFront dashboard, right? And if I'm entering the origin, and if I come down here, you can see we have an option called as Web Application Firewall. So if at all you want to protect your CloudFront DNS endpoint with a WAF, you can actually enable this option here, enable security protections. So that by default, whatever requests that is hitting your CloudFront endpoint will be first evaluated by the WAF. So based on the WAF rules, the request will be either allowed or it will be rejected. Okay, so this is how you enable WAF in your CloudFront distribution. You just need to enable the security protections. Okay, so that is what this answer is saying. You'll have to set up a WAF on the CloudFront distribution, use conditions and rules that block the cross-site scripting and SQL injection attack. Okay, now let's go to the third question. A company is using a application load balancer for its public-facing multi-tier web applications. The security team has recently reported that there has been a surge of SQL injection attacks lately. So this is one of the keyword, SQL injection attacks, which causes critical data discrepancy issues. The same issue is also encountered by other web applications in another AWS accounts, right? The same issue is also encountered in other web applications in other accounts behind an application load balancer. An immediate solution is required to prevent the remote injection of unauthorized SQL queries and protect their applications across multiple accounts. So here also there are two keywords. One is SQL injection attacks and preventing the attacks. Yes, that is typically going to point to WAF as the answer. Okay, but they are also given across multiple accounts. So which is a service that will help in deploying our firewall rules across multiple accounts? It is actually AWS Firewall Manager. So you have to get that keyword also here. So your answer should contain WAF as well as Firewall Manager. Okay, so that is the answer that we need to pick. And if you see the answers here, first is talking about NACI, which is not applicable in this case. Then they are talking about network firewall, that is also not applicable in this scenario. Then guard duty, no, because it's having a different use case. So basically the answer is this: use WAF. Okay, so WAF is anyways here. Use WAF and set up a managed rule to block request patterns associated with the exploitation of SQL databases like injection attacks. Fine. Associate with the application load balancer. So this is the key thing here. Integrate WAF with firewall manager to reuse the rules across all the accounts, right? So that is the reason they've given this additional keyword across multiple accounts. So you need to use a combination of WAF plus firewall manager in order to achieve this requirement. Okay, so answer choice 2 is the correct answer. Okay, great. Let's move to the next question. So a solution architect identified a series of DDoS attacks while monitoring the VPC. See here they are not mentioning about a website or any web application. They are just saying there are DDoS attacks happening on the VPC, and the architect needs to mitigate the current cloud infrastructure. So he's saying it should be the mitigation of the overall cloud infrastructure to protect the data of the clients. See, there is no mention of a website or a web application. Here they are just talking about DDoS attacks happening in the overall VPC environment, and they want to mitigate these attacks in their overall cloud infrastructure. So since website or web application is not specifically mentioned here, WAF is ruled out here. You cannot select WAF here. WAF means it is a web application should be coming in the picture. Here it is just only the DDoS attack. So the answer we can straight away narrow down to shield. So this is the correct answer. Use the shield advance to detect and mitigate DDoS attacks. Okay? So whenever you get a question, mitigate the DDoS attack for the overall cloud infrastructure or for the overall VPC, you can straight away narrow down your answer to the shield. Okay. But whenever you see website, web application behind the load balancer, behind a CloudFront distribution, wanted to mitigate the attacks, then you have to go for WAF. Okay. I hope this is clear, team. Okay, now let us go through the next question. Okay. A logistics company runs its web application on a fleet of EC2 instances. The company uses the application load balancer for the traffic distribution. The company runs the same application in multiple regions to cater to clients across several countries. A recent government policy has been enacted that prohibits a company from servicing a specific country. Okay, so the request from a specific country should not be entertained, right? So which of the following actions is recommended action to comply with the government requirement? So I was telling you that whenever you see specifying from a specific country or block or allowing a request from specific country, you also have the option for that in the WAF, right? So definitely you need to look for the answer. Where is WAF, right? And then that would be the correct answer. If you see, the first answer itself is correct because all other things they're talking about different services, right? Second one, if you see, it's a network firewall, not suitable here. Then they're talking about the network access list, not required here, again on the access list. So this would be your correct answer. Create a web ACL rule in AWS WAF to block the specified country, associate the rule to the application load balancer, right? Now, how do you block the request coming from a specific country? I will try to show that in the console. So if I go to the WAF rule, and if you can see here in the actions, I can either count block, right? For example, I select block here, and here maybe I'll go for a regular rule. And under inspect, you can see here, we have the statement. Under that, we have inspect, and inspect, we have a originating from a country, right? So here we need to select from which country we need to block the traffic. So let's say I want to maybe block the traffic from maybe Brazil, right? So now the action is block, correct? And the country I have selected here under the inspect, right? It is basically Brazil. So any traffic or any hits coming from the Brazil region, that will be blocked by the WAF. So this is how, based on the country, you can actually either allow the traffic or block the traffic based on the originating country. Okay, so we have that option in the WAF by selecting this originating from a country option under the inspect. Okay, so I hope this is clear. This is one of the steps when you create a web ACL, right? So in that case, this is the correct answer. Okay, so let's move into our next question. Okay, just one moment. I'm just having some issues with my pen here. Fine. So this is what I was explaining. In the AWS WAF, you can use the geographic match rule statement to block access to your site from specific countries or allow access only from specific countries. Okay, so let's see one last question. A company has an application hosted on ECS cluster behind an application load balancer. Okay, the solution architect is building a sophisticated web filtering solution that allows or blocks the web request based on the country. So it is again the same, based on a country scenario, right? However, the solution should still allow specific IP addresses from that country. So which combination of steps we will be doing it here to satisfy this requirement, right? So that is a question. So yeah, basically, if you see the answers here, using WAF, create a web ACL with the rule that explicitly allow requests from the approved IP addresses declared in the IP set. Yes, this can be one correct answer. Then add another rule in the web ACL with a geo match condition that blocks the request originating from a specific country. Yeah, we saw that option, right? We have the option either to allow the IP addresses or block the IP addresses by specifying the appropriate country. For example, I have selected Brazil here. I can either configure a block or I can configure an allow. Similarly, I can select some other country and I can configure a allow or a block, right? So we have that option here. Okay? So that is the reason we need to go for these two steps, right? So whichever has to be allowed, put it in the allowed list. Whichever has to be blocked, put it under the blocked list. Okay? So for this question, these two are the correct answers. Okay, fine, team. I hope this has given you some feel on how to identify keywords, especially related to the WAF and Shield services, and point your answers directly to either WAF or a Shield based on the scenario or the requirement in the question. Okay, fine. So this is just my start for these two services, team. So whatever exam questions are possible for the other services, that also I'm going to collate, do the video service wise so that you get focused on one particular service and then you'll get comfortable cracking the exam question for those services, right? So today now we covered WAF and Shield. Team, I also wanted to tell you that I even offer trainings on this AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate. So I can provide you hands-on lab trainings, also giving the guidance for the exam, taking up the certification exam as well. I can share the tips and even the practice exam questions for to enable you to clear your certification exam, along with all the guidance needed to clear the exam, right? And also even provide a training on DevOps as well. So if anyone is interested to take up this training from me, or you can actually send an email to this email ID team. So basically, I will share you the details on the course and what would be the duration, etc. So training mode, it is typically going to be an online training via Zoom. So the class recordings for each and every class, it will be uploaded onto the Google Drive share to which I will be giving you access. And it is going to be an interactive course completely focused on hands-on lab exercises that you can be achieved, right? Because even clearing the exam, you need a very good hands-on in order to really interpret some of the questions and get to the right answers. So that is what my training is going to comprise of. So if anyone would be interested or to pursue the training from me, whether it is the AWS certification, or architect associate certification, or this one, DevOps, you can send an email to this particular email ID. Okay. So I'll be responding to your queries as well as I will share the details. Fine, team. I think that's all I had for this video. So if you like this content, you can feel free to share with your known circles. And I will meet you all in my next video. Thank you all so much.